Haidong! In this video, we're going to talk about bamboo cutting, part 1. Bamboo cutting is one of those pieces of swordsmanship that people really like to do, like actually being like cut things with a sword, right? So whether it's water bottles or like straw mats or, in this case, bamboo. It's just a very interesting part of swordsmanship in general. It also gets like the blood pumping, be able to see something cut in twain, and it's very exciting stuff. So let's actually talk about how to actually get started with all of that. In this video, we're going to talk about a few quick tips to kind of get yourself prepped for it. In the next video, I'm going to talk about actually how to prepare the bamboo and stuff like that, at least in the case of like setting things up in the actual like canister and stuff like that. But for now, I want to introduce the idea of, again, how to progress towards it. I want to talk about the general technique of cutting some pieces of bamboo and stuff like that. But as in particular with this video, because you will be using a sharp weapon if you are in fact doing things alongside me, is that, again, no legal liability. So if you do anything, you're hurting yourself, and it's not on me. So with that, let's get started. So starting off with a few quick tips to kind of get yourself ready to actually do some bamboo cutting, right? So one is actually start using a metal sword as soon as possible, right? I highly recommend, so when I say metal, I mean steel sword, right? So that's going to be a closer weight of what you can kind of expect to be using as a sharp sword. It's also just generally good because it's going to be working on like body mechanics and that nice feedback of actually using a heavier weapon. So that's the first thing I highly recommend that you do, and also get used to sheathing the sword without looking at it, which I know sounds kind of obvious, but I can't tell you how many times I've been to a test, and whenever they're chuck-coming the sharp sword, they're like doing that, right? Instead of like having a very confident chuck-on, right? So the very first thing to do is just to start with an actual metal sword, so you actually have that weight. On that same line, right, so the second tip would actually be if that sword has a blood groove, or if there is another sword you have that can kind of give you an audible feedback of your cutting angle. You can be using a heavy weapon, you can have all the power in the world, it still may not cut the bamboo, as hopefully you won't see in this video, right? Hopefully we will see it actually cutting, but that is an actual aspect, right? You want to make sure you have good cutting angles as you cut. Otherwise, you are literally clubbing the sword with a bad club as opposed to cutting a sword with a good sword. And the third tip is just getting used to being around a live weapon, right? So that's mostly a mental aspect for a lot of us, right? Because we usually don't usually run the blade, even of a dull sword, against us as we cut, so we really shouldn't be afraid of using it. But it's always that like nagging feeling like, oh, maybe this is the time I'm going to get myself cut. So please don't do that, right? Because that's bad. But for now, work yourself up to having the ability to cut with a live weapon. So what that could look like is actually just start going through some gentle moves with a live sword. So you're just kind of used to having, just mentally having this thing around, right? And then as you get more confident, start actually incorporating a little bit more speed, maybe some turns and stuff like that, just so you're used to having that around. So once you're more comfortable with that, that mental aspect of it, then we can really start to engage with actually cutting pieces of bamboo. So the transparency part of this video, right? So I'm going to be taking a combination that, so Chief Master Laura from Ohio, presented, right? I'm going to be taking it and kind of shifting it a little bit, right? So it's not one-to-one and all that fun stuff, but also explaining aspects of it that might be a new or fresh perspective, right? So I'm going to be doing things with bamboo specifically because we're cutting bamboo and not something like straw or something like that. Because it's a very fibrous material, we're going to be doing something a little bit different just to kind of at least get you off the ground with practicing this. Without further ado, let's actually start doing a combination, right? So part 1, so video part 1 is going to be mostly about actually doing cuts and stuff like that. Part 2 is going to be about the setup, because I know people want to actually start cutting and stuff like that. So what I would like to do is, so from here, first just be in a good ready position. So be aware of where your weapon is and all that fun stuff. So be aware of your surroundings. If someone's being silly over here, be mindful of that. But this is your attention position, right? From here, you're going to break that seal. I'm just going to do the standard draw. You're going to see some people do fancier stuff. You don't need to, right? Just from here, just draw, defense. And again, just get nice and comfortable. One thing I want you to be aware of, so first of all, actually, as you just noticed me do, if you're in a group in particular and you want to show that you're disengaging, that you're no longer trying to be active, this is a generally good thing for you to consider, is just kind of lower the blade here. This is really good if someone is working with your piece of bamboo, especially if you're a student and your master is up here trying to demonstrate, like, okay, like this is what this angle means. Having your sword ready as if you're about to cut while he or she is at the piece of bamboo, not great. Versus like if you're disengaging, it's always good just to have it like lowered. Anyway, another thing to consider is if your jingam or your sharp sword or your shinken, whatever you're using, is different from your standard sword, just be aware of the differences. So for me, for example, there's this wrapping that's actually on the saya of my sword that I'm not in love with per se, but it's ceremonial and I would feel weird taking it off. So that is different for me. I have to be aware of this, so don't like go gung-ho imagining it is the exact same sword you've been using forever. Just be aware. Anyway, so from here, all I want you to do, we're actually going to use a pretty simple stance. I'm actually going to face this way. Stepping in, right, as if you're getting into good cutting distance. Prepare for a center cut. I know, like, you're like, prepare for a center cut. Center cut, then shift it over. I'm not even going to move my back foot for this one, just to kind of get some practice in. From here, throw that diagonal, and then defense. So again, so from here, step in as I bring the sword up overhead. And if you want to, you can bring that back knee in. For me and for newbies, I recommend just kind of keep this wider stance. Bring it over to the side as you cut. And when you're done, focus, demonstrate that you're done. Most people do this chakam. I like another one that I'm going to be using later. But for now, that's good. Also, you probably just noticed I did something that a lot of people in Japanese martial arts do with their swords, is they kind of do this just to make sure it's resealed. It's a good practice. Just probably don't do it in front of another Federation master because they'll be creeped out. But anyway, so let's actually talk about why I mentioned that center cut position as opposed to going straight into a diagonal. Again, transparency, this is also what Chief Master Laura does when she teaches this as well, at least from what I've seen. So the reasoning that I have behind it is because of the material we're working with. We're dealing with bamboo. Bamboo has a lot of very fibrous materials going straight up and down. And if you try to hit it from the side, you're going to just like crack into the fibers as opposed to cut into the fibers or cut through the fibers, right? So what I want you to think about is when you cut, it's not so much you're cutting on the 45. So think more of it as a center cut on an angle as opposed to just a straight diagonal or, goodness forbid, a cross cut raised up to a diagonal. So when you're starting with bamboo, I actually recommend that you start with like a 30-degree angle as opposed to that 45. Just because, again, of the material we're working with, you're going to be able to get a lot more feedback one way or the other if you have a steeper angle as opposed to a wider angle. A lot more things can go wrong. It's harder to interpret what went wrong if you hit something wide, right? Now you can usually tell if you cut wide just based on like actually having the pole, looking back at the pole, but that's just something I want you to practice. So we have bamboo, right? So a general protocol that I'd like to have, at least for my students and when you're in a more public setting like a test and stuff like that, is to obviously have it set up. If you're the one with a sharp sword, don't draw it until you have the eye of the judge and the judge gives you permission. right? This is mostly just so we don't have people going like this and they're like, and they're kind of like just examining things and stuff like that. All of that's bad, right? All of that is like having that live weapon all over the place. So you're here, kind of wait for like some sort of acknowledgement. When you're given permission, then you make it very obvious. You can say like 준비, palto, and draw into your defense. So what I'm going to do is actually do it from this direction so you kind of see what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to do my cuts here, maybe. We'll see, right? So first, defense, and then get your distance. So if you are new, what I'm going to do is take it from here. So defense, right? If you're new, right? So this is not part of a test. This is not part of any of that. If you want, get your distance. You want to be cutting with like the last third of your sword, ideally even like the quarter of the sword. Use that to get a good distance, and then get back your distance this way. Again, first couple times you do it. Here, you can practice coming in with that strike, see how you feel, and then dive back, right? Now, part of a test, there's going to be something different, right? From a test perspective, from here, go straight in. There's no this, right? It's just draw defense, cut, right? One aspect that I would like for you to also do, especially if you are in a more public space, is when you're about to cut, announce cutting. If anyone's like, oh no, don't do that, then don't cut that. But a good practice is, even if it seems a little bit obvious, from here, cutting, and then go for it, right? So let's do what we just did, right? I'm actually going to do my other side because it's a lot more consistent. So peek behind the curtain, right? So from here, prepare. And as we're going to be coming in with this strike, right? Again, the main idea is to squeeze on impact as you follow through. Now, because it's your first time, after you follow through, come back into guard and then move on to your next one. If you're more seasoned with this, you can cut kind of, so for example, if I cut, bring it back, cut, and then maybe do like a third cut depending on how confident you are. But this introduction, don't try to be a superhero, right? You're trying to learn something, and I'm finding out that having a bright light, so that's where the opening is behind my bamboo, not great. However, we're going to try it anyway. So from here, again, step, center, get ready for that cut, and then cut. From here, defense, back, like so. Now, if you only want to do that one cut, you're going to focus, and then chuck on. I want to cut that piece a little bit more, right? So from here, I'm going to do an uppercut, right? So it's going to be the exact same thing. Obviously, you can't do center cut and then go off to the side, right? All I want you to do, you can actually probably even see me doing this against the bamboo, right? Is step off to the side. Again, I was actually a little bit too far away, but stepping off to the side, engage that hip to really throw the weight underneath the sword, right? So from here, get back your distance. Especially again, first time, take your time getting ready. As much as it's a little bit harrowing, it is better to have a lower angle, again, because you're kind of cut up along the fibers as opposed to across the fibers. We'll see if you get a take where it's not a good cut, and we'll digest it, right? So actually, before we do that, I know this is very impromptu. One reason why bamboo cutting is so useful is the piece of bamboo can tell you a lot. So if you actually look at the angle of the cut, there is no denying that is the cutting angle that you had, right? So like the little criteria that some people have is to put these two pieces together, and if it makes like a perfect 90-degree angle here, you're at 45. So I was a little bit steep, but it's something that I highly encourage you to do as a first time cutting, right? So let's do the same thing now with an uppercut, right? So from here, draw a defense. Get your distance. If you're used to it, cut from here. If this is your first time, step in, get your distance. noticing the diamond cut's gonna be a little bit shorter range, right? From here, cutting. And then wait for instruction. So obviously don't go like this and then try to bring it out. Once you're done, you're good, right? From there, you're going to get more instructions. I'll talk about like probably how you're going to be taking things out and all that fun stuff. But for now, that's a good start. Now, one thing to consider is also you don't want to be, again, a Superman and try to take out the thickest piece on your first try. Something like this is 100% okay. The main thing, and this will be obvious as you actually go through it, the thinner a piece is, the more whippy it's going to be, as opposed to a thicker piece, the less whippy it's going to be. So if you're doing a quick succession of cuts, actually a thinner piece can sometimes be a little bit more annoying. Let me do the same thing going from this side, and I'll actually do my not great angle for a cut, right? I decided on this angle because hopefully you can still see me, but also see like the different angles and stuff like that. So same thing as before, we just set this up. I'm gonna be looking for someone to give me like authority to be like, hey, let's get you started. From here, show that you're ready, palto. That is more than anything else, just letting people know that something is happening as opposed to you getting prepped up, but whatever. So from here, again, first time, step in, get your distance, step back. Fine, that is absolutely okay for you to do. So let's try that, right? Knowing that this is not my great side, let's actually try it. So prepare, slightly off angle, and then throw your cut. Like so. And when you're done, face back. Notice that the papery thing is just the inside of the bamboo. It's just not normally something you see a lot of. One thing to actually note is, I was about to do something that I probably shouldn't do, so obviously chuck them whenever you're working with bamboo. Try not to cut through the node, just because it's a little bit hard to cut. Obviously this is a much thinner piece, so it's not a big deal, but just keep in mind, you'll be aiming for between these nodes. And something to keep in mind is if you do cut one of the pieces, aim for the next node down. So try and do multiple cuts on the same node. You either have to have a really sharp sword or be super, super skilled. Actually, neither of which I am, versus someone like Master Lee, for example, is an incredible bamboo cutter. He can probably do this very easily. But in general, I recommend hitting only one thing per node before we do anything. So at this point, we've done the left cut, we've done the right cut, as well as an uppercut as well. So let's try something in succession. So this is after you've done a few of these. I want to cut and cut, right? As opposed to cut, reset, let's try to actually have these two cuts in relative quick succession. This is mostly after you're like really prepping to get ready for a test, prepping to get ready. There's a lot of prepping. So you're getting ready for a test as opposed to just merely recreational. So let's take a look, right? So we're here, right? Again, if you're a beginner, get your distance, make sure you're good with that. So I'm gonna do this nice and slow, right? So prepare, over the side, cut. Now, instead of going back to defense, I am going to step back, high guard, step forward, prepare, and cut. Now, if you want to be a jerk, you can do a spin uppercut, which now I just said it, I have to do it. So you can spin through. I was almost out of range. And then chuck on, making sure that you're being nice and safe with all the pieces of equipment. So one thing to never do on camera is announce you're going to do something that you didn't really think you were going to do, and then you get to do it. So that's the idea with that. So if you're doing these in succession, cut, back, cut if you want to do something else, move on with a cut. Obviously don't throw in a spin if you're not used to it yet. And then last thing that we're going to do is this final piece of bamboo. We'll see how I do. But another concept that specifically the Federation is incorporating that is trying to differentiate them from their Japanese cousins is, as opposed to just being very linear here, which is very common in like tatami cutting, bamboo cutting, and stuff like that, at least in Japan. What the Federation is trying to do here is actually move around the target, striking as you go, right? So I'm going to attempt to demonstrate that. I'm not the best at this, but people want to know how to bamboo cut, and this is the best of my ability. So the idea is going to be the exact same, but I'm going to try to move around the target depending on, again, what's open and stuff like that. The same thing. So chariot, get ready. Get your acknowledgement, draw a defense, yeah! Right? In case someone's too close, they might be like, oh no, and they leave, right? So from here, the idea is to move around a target as opposed to just going straight in. So the idea is to start off on going on an angle, right? So from here, cut, turn through, cut, turn through, cut, turn through, and pretend to cut for dramatic effect, and then ultimately face the target and chuck on. Makes sense? So that's the idea behind the Federation trying to make it a little bit more Korean as opposed to, or at least different from Japan, just make things a little different. So keep that in mind as you go through tests. Eventually they're going to want to see something like that which is a little bit more dynamic and stuff like that. But yeah, so that was our introduction to bamboo cutting. So hopefully that was useful piece of information. Again, highly influenced by Chief Master Laura and all of her help with bamboo cutting. So she is extremely proficient and very good at that. So if you ever get a chance to have a workshop with her, highly recommend it. But alas, you have me, right? So you have me trying to explain this stuff. So with that, make sure you stay safe. You know I'm going to be talking about like how safe you have to be. Again, I'm not responsible for anything bad happening, but make sure that you are doing so safely because you're using a sharp sword. But make sure, stay safe, stay humble, and keep training. Haidong!